making this film, when you're making a film in the outdoors, which, I mean, it's partly a nature film, it's partly an adventure film, one can look at technique as apart from the content, and so we don't often talk about the content here because we're filmmakers.
We had, the traditional method of, like, where we interviewed people, and then we had archive, incredible archive. And then there was the decision to use reconstructions, of which about 18% of the film is actually reconstruction. So the techniques involved in using that. And once I decided that we were going to use reconstructions, there's also work done to make those look like they are actually on K2. So it was more than just actually going into the environment and shooting. We used a lot of speaking technically, processes like green screen, because specifically in this case, I wanted we filmed the reconstructions on the relative safety of the Eiger in Switzerland at about 4,000 meters, because I wanted snow, ice, sun, all of those things, and the physical environment for the actors and the climbers to react to. But because the mountains around us were so different to the Karakoram region of the Himalaya where K2 is, I decided, to much to the frustration of Robbie Ryan, the DP, that like any time we pan around to see mountains, a green screen would go up, and he'd go like, "But hang on, what's wrong with those? What's with those mountains? They're perfect."
He liked his lights.
Yeah, and he was like, "They're lovely," and I'm going like, "No, sorry, green screen in." And while we were arguing, I'd have the grips going. Put that in there.
So you were making a big movie here at all points in time.
Without a big budget, though.
Oh, come on.
I always try and make big movies without big budgets.
Well, that's a great thing.
I would also say there was a kind of a forensic aspect to doing the recreations, in that we had poured over these transcripts and what people said had happened over and over again to try to figure out the best way we could do these moments that weren't caught on film. And in fact, he's kind of downplaying the whole thing, but Pemba was there for the recreations, as were two other
He plays
surfers.
himself.
Plays himself, but he was also there to kind of confirm how it could have happened, when we were going on all these different points of view and kind of creating these scenes. We had people who actually were on the mountain that day telling us, how they remembered it, so...
It's a great deal of material to try to condense into a narrative. So how did you come to then choose this structure as a writer, particularly?
Well, I mean, I think that we, from day one, wanted to put people on the mountain immediately and into the experience of it. I don't climb mountains. I would never, particularly after this experience. But there's no way I would do it, and I thought, and we thought together, talking about it, that what we wanted to do was try to give people the experience of it, and that would mean, to not spend 30 or 40 minutes talking about ropes and crampons and who's going to carry what and what team is where, but rather to get up there on the mountain and kind of viscerally feel like you're a part of what's going on immediately, and when we committed to that meant we were going to play with the structure. So
how did you come to this? You were not a filmmaker first, so how did this project come together?
Well, it was a huge media story in Ireland as well. I mean, the fact that we kind of focus on Jerry MacDonald is purely accidental, and I'm Irish and he's Irish because...
Oh, no, there's all that RTE money, come on, no, the Irish.
No. I mean, truthfully, the reality is, what happened is, I mean, it was a big media story as we talked about there.
I'm kidding,
I know. But what happened is that very soon after the events, and I'm not a climber either at all, and so a friend of Jer's had come and said, "Hey, listen, you heard about that story?" I went, "Yeah," and he had known the Irish climber Pat Falvey, who had climbed with Jer and Pemba in 2000, and he said, you should talk to him, and he brought Pat into me, and he sat down, and I remember going like, I know nothing about mountains, what would I be doing here? But I was drawn to the kind of the extreme nature of the events itself, and basically Pat had told us what had happened on the mountain because he'd been in contact with Pemba, and let me be very clear, Pemba wasn't looking to try and have his story told. I mean, we had to drag it out of him. He's a very reluctant hero, to be brutally honest, and but Pat had said, look, we heard all about this, but the nature of 24/7 rolling news these days means by the time Pemba came out, nobody was even picking up on this. So it just seemed like there was a certain amount of inequality within the story that, you know, struck me in whatever socialist beliefs I still have in me, you know what I mean? And
Well, I think you've made that right.
Yeah.
You've made
Yeah,
that right, and
thank you.
given him a voice, obviously.
And I felt he really needed a voice. And through, to cut a very long story short, through interviewing Pemba very shortly after that, he brought to light the events of what happened on the mountain through the photographs. And we kind of went, hey, hang on a second. So something more had happened on the mountain than we knew, because, you know, the media had reported that Jared just got lost on the mountain and he was hypoxic and he wandered up aimlessly, of course, which set in train the motion for their family to be very upset and wanting, the truth, to know about their son and so on and so forth. So that was the genesis. I didn't want to just do like a TV doc. I wanted to do it in a format, and that was back to what Mark and myself discussed. We wanted to make sure that, if we were going to present this as a theatrical film, it would be very different and take you on a journey. And here's the thing, because we know it's like, in classic film trope, we know what happens. So the point was to take us on a journey where we know what happens. We say in the very beginning what happens, but we still hopefully took you on a journey that kept you kind of in suspense. And not to say that glibly, because we're always fully aware when we're doing this that 11 people died to make this story possible.